very much beloved Damon Albarn side project that's been going on for so many years now are at it again with a new album. Gorillaz have always been very different to what Damon Albarn was doing with Blur, as you are already aware. Anyone that's listened to both artists could tell you that pretty much straight away. Gorillaz have always been very, very creative with the way that they, put out their music videos, and the worlds that they create within their albums. There's always something so extravagant and outlandish about what they're wanting to show the world with their music. Plastic Beach being the one album that I think a lot of people would generally agree has been the most interesting concept album that Gorillaz have ever done, and some people even think it's the best album they've ever done too. These days Gorillaz aren't exactly at the forefront of everyone's minds, just like they were in the early 2000s, having huge hits, even #1 hits in the UK, as well as timeless songs that I don't think you'll ever really forget, such as Feel Good Inc., Clint Eastwood, many of the tracks too. So it was always going to be difficult to enter new decades and replicate that same amount of huge success that they had in the early days, but they've still got a huge cult following, a huge dedicated fan base. But I think it's safe to say that lots and lots of people and their fans would agree that it's been a bit of the mess that was Humanz, even though it was scattered with a few good tracks, to be fair. I mean, there were some genuinely good tracks on there, but it really ran as an awkward compilation where there was some really good features and there were some really bad features, and some tracks just generally didn't work too well at all. And then you got the Now, which just sucked all that away and ended up being just a really stale and dull listen compared to what you usually expect from the animated, just really exciting approach that Gorillaz usually take. Song Machine is certainly going back to what they were doing on Humanz though. I don't think there's any real denying that, with the sort of compilation feel to it, where you've got plenty of features that are, padding out the track list to 65 minutes. And it sort of feels like they're trying to mend Humanz. I don't know if Gorillaz themselves, Damon Albarn, is exactly proud of that album. I don't really know. I don't know if the response to that album made Damon go, you know what, we kind of need to fix some of those issues, or it's just the direction that they wanted to go again. And for the most part, it seems to have paid off, because this is definitely getting a warmer reception than their past couple of albums. Some people even saying it's, up there with their best, which I don't know if I fully agree, because for me, it still carries a lot of the same issues as Humanz did. And even without comparing it to Humanz, I just think generally you've once again just got plenty of good tracks just scattered throughout an album with so much mediocrity. There's definitely some interesting incorporations of features throughout this album. You've got plenty of different types of artists coming through, to the point where even if you didn't like this album as a whole, like me, I think you could at least appreciate the way that Damon Albarn curates these projects, because just having artists like Beck, St. Vincent, Skepta, you've got Goldlink as well. You've got just such a huge variety of names across this thing that you can't help but be in awe of, in that how you'd get all of these people on one album. It's just so impressive. Elton John, the way it comes together though just doesn't really feel very satisfying, because as good as some of the names are on here, some of them just aren't really utilized in the best kind of way. St. Vincent being the best example here. She just sounds like she's doing backing vocals. Like, why would you bring St. Vincent on a track? Annie Clark is being as talented as she is, and she's barely even noticeable. She's just background noise. She's just doing faded vocals that barely contribute to the song. It's just such a letdown. I don't know what's going on here. I don't necessarily mind Beck's feature, although I've never really been the biggest Beck fan, honestly. He sounds okay here. The tune is really good though. The core tune of the track is really catchy. There's some just weird lyrics coming from Damon though, that whole Viagra thing that he says. But for me, it's just weird because this track doesn't really sound like some of the others. So it's even if I did love it, which I don't really love it, it would just be hard to come back to this album and play it in context with everything else, because you've got Pac-Man, which has Schoolboy Q, which doesn't really work on a lyrical level. I mean, the instrumental is just classic Gorillaz. It sounds like something that would fit on Demon Days, honestly. But the lyrics and Damon's vocal delivery is just so limp. I just don't know what he's trying to go for here. Plenty of tracks, he is actually the least exciting part of his own song, which I find weird. He just often sounds really uninspired. He's not really pulling his weight. He sounds bored at times. The whole bit where he's like, you can freak me out, you can throw me in the lion pit, you can boil my hands. I'm a mad Pac-Man. What are you saying? What are you saying, man? What are you saying? Schoolboy Q doesn't sound particularly bad, but it's one of the cases on this album, many cases, where it's just like a feature for the sake of having a feature. It's like it didn't need Schoolboy Q here, really. And it's just like, well, we want every track to have some big name on it. Let's just put him here. Like, did it need it? Could it have not been used in a better way than this? One frustrating thing about this album, though, is that there are so many features, and yet I'm impressed that Damon manages to bring in some lesser known names, because obviously it gets them a bit more of a voice, gives them a bit more attention. Maybe people might check out their music based on the tracks, but sadly, so many of those lesser known names end up contributing to like the worst songs. I mean, Friday the 13th is so dire, and Octavian's delivery is just so limp to me that I just don't get interested in the track at all. Simplicity, again, as Joan as a policewoman, just so uninteresting. Like, again, another track that would make me kind of go, ooh, someone I don't know, maybe this is going to be good, and it just falls so flat. It's a shame, because it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm disregarding them just because I've never heard of them. It's actually just the issue with the album being curated in the way it is, where you've just got so many tracks that just don't necessarily work in the way that they do, and then you just have to have a random guest feature that doesn't necessarily fit anyway, like the Kano one, who is usually great, but here I just don't think he needed to be on this track. It's like they just wanted to throw in rap features because obviously they wanted rap verses, but when you look back at their older tracks, like, you know, Mos Def featuring on Plastic Beach, that works, but somehow here, some of them just don't. De La Soul on Feel Good Inc., like, that shouldn't work, but somehow that song has become so iconic that you just cannot even question how well those two worlds come together, or even Del the Funky Homo Sapien on Clint Eastwood. But whereas here, there just isn't that like marriage of two worlds coming together at all. The only one that I'd say works the best is the JPEG Mafia feature, surprisingly, which I thought was going to, again, be really out of place and weird. But the guest feature of Chai, I think they're a J-pop band, like, coming through, I just don't know how that works, but I think it's just JPEG Mafia's general talent of being able to kind of like be a chameleon and just work his way into so many different types of instrumentals and stuff. He's always been really good at that, especially on features. So I feel like this is one of the tracks that incorporates hip-hop that actually works so well.
So I realised after recording the video, I am a big fool and forgot to mention Opium, which is technically another hip-hop inclusion on this album, featuring Earth Gang, which, by the way, their last album from last year was really good. I still think it's underrated and overlooked. The Outkast comparisons never really helped them, to be honest. I think it hindered their image and hindered people's expectations for the album, but I do think they're really fun, and they bring a lot of energy to this track too. I just really like the tone of their voices. They're both very distinct, they're both very animated, and I think they're the exact kind of rappers that work well with what Gorillaz are always trying to do, which is what makes this track definitely one of the best moments here. The only thing is, though, is that the 2-minute intro, what the hell's that about? You don't need that lengthy intro. You just get into the song, man. Like, if the song started when the rappers started, like, that would have been a great way to kick off the track. But yeah, apart from that, I think this is definitely one of the best songs here.
Slow Tie's bringing his usual punk energy on his feature as well, Momentary Bliss, but he's usually really good at doing this. He can kind of just bring out his weird isms on a track and just throw in loads of charisma, because he just usually has bags the personality, just like he did on that Disclosure track too. So he can kind of just make himself fit even in the weirdest places. Even without those really good moments, there's some really, really good tracks as well, like Aries, man. Aries, Jesus Christ, the instrumental on this one is so good, and then the vocals come through, and Damon's just sounding great. Like, there's so many tracks where he just sounds bored, but here he's just bringing in so much passion, and man, it really, really works, and it pays off so well. Like the guitar on this track sounds like something that The Cure would have done in their prime days in the 80s. I'm not entirely sure what Georgia contributes to this track, but I'm assuming she's on production credits, but whatever, the features are doing, I think just really, really brings this track together really well. Like, this is just what I think the entire album should have sounded like, but instead they opt for these just random detours and throw in some guest features really just for the sake of it. I mean, the flow of this album just doesn't end up working, and it's a shame because it should, but I just think, again, it's got the Humanz effect of just one feature here, then another, and it's just like a completely mismatched compilation of tracks that just don't come together in an album way. I think Désolé is actually the best track here though, with the great refrain on this one. Another track where Damon's just bringing a lot more to the song than he usually is on most of these tracks. You got the Fatoumata Diawara feature. She is just so good here. Like, this again is just what Gorillaz are usually good at, where they bring in features and make them work. And this is another track where I think they do that really well. But I think for the most part, a lot of this album's kind of throwaway. Like, I could imagine in a few months, people would just be returning to the best tracks and probably leave the rest, because that's kind of how this album feels to me anyway. And maybe that was the point. Maybe that's the point of what Damon's doing these days. It's like you've got so much variety, you can pick and choose the best ones, and if you don't like everything, it doesn't matter, because there's something for everyone, which I kind of appreciate. That might be what the goal is, but for like an hour and 5 minutes, do you need all of these tracks? Do you need every single one? I mean, I don't think I do. I think I'll just pick the best ones, keep them, and throw away the rest. So for me, I'm going to go 5.5 out of 10. Don't think many people agree, but let me know your thoughts in the comments anyway. If you think this is actually really good, that's great, but let me know why. Let me know what your favorite track is as well. Thank you for watching this review. Do have a good day, and goodbye.